2023, the year of Starfield, and today I want to talk about the hype around this game. The undeniable, irrefutable, and totally unjustifiable hype around this game. In case you're forgetting, Bethesda is very good at shipping buggy games, and stepping up the scale of the world that they're trying to deliver will likely only compound those problems. Also, what they've shown us to date leaves plenty of reasons to be concerned. So before we get too excited, I want to go into detail about why we should temper our expectations when it comes to Starfield. The other thing I want to talk about today, though, is how hyped I am for Starfield. It's 2023, it is finally here, and I cannot wait to get my hands on this game. To explore the world and the stories, soak in all the lore, the hidden side quests. This is the year of Starfield, and the release cannot come soon enough. And it's that spectrum of expectations I want to discuss today. Bethesda can be so good and yet so bad at the same time. I think it's wise to be cautious about the hype, but I also know that if, or better yet when Bethesda puts out a buggy game, that game still hits different from everything else. The worlds, their stories, they run deep, and you can get lost in them for a very long time. But which is it? Is the hype justified, or will it be just another bug-filled release? Yes. But before we talk Starfield, I want to give you a bit of background. My love for Bethesda games started back in 2006 with The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion on the Xbox 360. And going back to look at it now is kind of painful. No one ever claimed Bethesda games pushed the graphical boundaries in any given generation. Where they innovated was in characters and stories and world design. The sixth generation of consoles was pretty limited on quality open world games. There was Fable and the GTA series, of course, but when it came to RPGs of the open world variety, the genre basically belonged to BioWare and Bethesda. And with the release of the 360 and the PS3, there was a bit more muscle to flex. And to open world RPGs, that meant more choices, more quests, and of course, bigger worlds. In the case of Oblivion, bigger than I had ever experienced in all my gaming to that point. The GTA San Andreas map was almost the same size as Oblivion's, but Cyrodiil felt a lot more lived in, even if a lot less dense. San Andreas was 3 separate maps, loosely connected with filler. And don't get me wrong, San Andreas was one of the best, but Oblivion was just different. I'd never felt so lost in a game world. I didn't feel like a protagonist as much as I felt like just another cog inside this seemingly giant in-game universe I inhabited. So many paths to explore, so many choices. Let's try and forget about the horse armor, because Oblivion did set the stage for RPGs in the 7th generation. But it was Bethesda's next outing that would really hook me. I was never into turn-based strategy games, and I grew up in the 80s, so I played them out of necessity. But in 2008, when Fallout 3 came out, and much of the fanbase was disappointed with Bethesda turning it into an FPS, I was all in. There were 2 games that ate up the overwhelming majority of my playtime during the 360 era. One was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, but that wouldn't come out until the end of 2009, and I know what I was doing with my 360 the year leading up to that. I was exploring the capital Wasteland. My least favorite part of the Fallout campaign was when it ended so abruptly, something they corrected in the first DLC, because that endgame discovery was something that kept me coming back again and again. Fallout 3 is one of a handful of games I've cared to complete to 100%. I unlocked achievements every single month for 11 months in a row. From October 2008 to August 2009, I chipped away at this game and all its DLC, and it chipped away at me. I couldn't get enough. Switching to first person was the thing that brought me into the franchise, though looking back, the FPS experience was janky at the best of times, and VATS really saved the day. It was an interesting crossroad between its turn-based roots and the FPS it was trying to become. Somehow, it all worked out, and the game left an indelible mark on many gamers. Apologies to the old school fans who were left with a very different but just as indelible mark. Fallout 3, as great as it was, would be immediately outshined by its sequel, New Vegas, in 2010. And this one not handled by Bethesda, but rather Obsidian. They took the Fallout first-person formula and gave us story. Lots and lots of story. Lots more choice, lots more branching paths, and they made Vegas the highest-rated Fallout game in just 18 months, which is really an achievement. Fallout 3 came out in 2008, and Skyrim was planned for 2011. Bethesda needed something to fill that gap. What Obsidian came up with in that time frame is nothing short of remarkable. Although they would go on to work on many things, we'd have to wait 8 more years to see Obsidian really run with their own IP, but 2019's Outer Worlds was well worth the wait. I don't want to give any credit to Bethesda for New Vegas. They were a thorn in its side, if anything, but it would be a shame to ignore one of the most amazing stepping stones on this journey, which is why I've included it here. November 11th, 2011, Elder Scrolls V Skyrim is released on PlayStation 3, the 360, and PC. June 4th, 2013, Skyrim Legendary Edition is released, including the game and 3 expansions for PS3, 360, and PC. September 29th, 2016, Skyrim Remastered is released on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and of course PC. November 17th, 2017, Skyrim is released for Nintendo Switch, making it the first Bethesda title on a Nintendo platform since 1991's Home Alone on the original NES? Also on November 17th, 2017, Skyrim is released for PlayStation VR. But don't feel left out if you have another manufacturer's headset, because before you know it, it'll be April 2nd, 2018. A Skyrim standalone VR is released supporting the HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, and Windows Mixed Reality headsets. November 11th, 2021, Skyrim Anniversary Edition is released on the PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC. And let us not forget, the definitive version of Skyrim released on June 11th, 2018, Skyrim Very Special Edition for Amazon Alexa.
A mud crab scuttles towards
First
you.
Roda!
I didn't catch that.
First Roda!
I didn't quite catch that.
First Roda!
Your shout echoes all the way to Sovngarde.
What happened?
First Roda. That's the command for knocking things over.
Is there a command for picking shit up?
Haven't reached that level yet.
When it comes to Skyrim, we could talk about the world, the story, that mountain over there. Yes, you can climb it. Skyrim is a great game, and if you haven't played it, you should. But its meme-worthiness is forever enshrined thanks to the sheer number of releases of this game. Are they done? That probably depends on how long it takes to ship Elder Scrolls VI. It's an amazing game, unfortunately outshined by Bethesda's efforts to monetize it every single generation. Seriously, it's a good game, but we wasted all this time covering the number of releases, and we need to move on. I know to some this is going to be a hot take, but Fallout 4 is one of my favorite games of all time. Is it perfect? Not even close. Does it have problems? Absolutely. But to someone who grew up around Boston, taking the Fallout FPS formula and dropping it into that setting was an incredibly powerful combination. I ran straight to Diamond City without ever looking at the map. I know it's a divisive title for a lot of reasons. Shifting to a voiced protagonist was one of the most jarring. Until Fallout 4, the character's voice was yours, or at least that's how I always felt. If you're like me and part of the 30% of people that have an inner monologue, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't, you probably just think I'm crazy, and that must be why I like Fallout 4. There were lots of improvements over its predecessors. Ignoring VATS was actually possible now thanks to upgraded gunplay. Not as good as most multiplayer shooters, but definitely passable for single player. Another great addition was settlement building. I'm a huge fan of that mechanic, and it kept me coming back more than anything else. But if you didn't enjoy it, I could understand hating it altogether, because Fallout 4 had 6 DLCs, 3 of which were focused entirely on settlement building. If it was your jam like me, you got your money's worth, but for everyone else, it was just a waste. But regardless of where you land on that settlement building debate, I think there's something we can all agree on. The story, and specifically its multiple endings, were the biggest downgrade. A search for your lost son quickly turns into a settlement building farm simulator, sending you on random quests from every other NPC you walk by, completely removing any sense of urgency of the actual story. And the culmination of that story, its quote-unquote multiple endings, multiple equals 2. Either one of the factions defeats the Institute, or the Institute defeats the factions. I hate to oversimplify, but it really is how the endings break down, and in an otherwise well-thought-out world, the endings suck the air out of the room, perfectly setting the table for Bethesda's next release.
I'm up here! As usual, I got word of a settlement that needs our help. Nice. I'll mark it on your map.
Regardless of anything Bethesda had done up until 2018, they quickly unraveled any goodwill in a staggering display of how not to launch a game and how not to run a company at the same time. I remember being really excited for the prospect of Fallout 76, and I remember getting my hands on the beta, the Break It Early test application. And having worked in software for many years, I also remember the timing of that beta. It was released just a few weeks before the actual game. That's not a beta, that's a stress test. And you can't get meaningful product feedback implemented in just a few weeks. That beta was the state of the game we'd be getting on release day. I canceled my pre-order and never looked back. One of the easiest ways to explain the state of Fallout 76 at release is the following clip from the Giant Bomb podcast.
You know, someone asked me yesterday, like, hey, you know, when you think your review is going to go up? And I'm like, no one on staff wants to play any more of this video game. Like, I'm not going to subject myself to another 20, 30 hours of this mess.
It's really upsetting.
To put a number on it. My number is, don't play this game.
There's not enough time in this video to really understand all the ways Bethesda went wrong with 76, but let's take a quick tour through the timeline of events to get an idea. On May 30th, 2018, there was a 24-hour stream teasing the initial announcement of Fallout 76. We didn't know at the time it would be multiplayer. We did know the setting, West Virginia. And then there was the E3 hype, the absolutely meme-worthy E3 hype.
All new rendering, lighting, and landscape technology. 16 times the detail. Fallout 76 is entirely online.
Hey, just was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
Of course.
Then there was the beta with limited access times, the day one 50 gig patch, and a PlayStation bug that forced players to not only reinstall the game, but their entire console operating system. On January 1st, 2019, nukes stopped working because in an always online game, no one thought that people might be playing next year for a game released October 28th. And logging into a Bethesda.net account to report any of these problems could randomly connect you to other people's accounts, exposing names, addresses, email, and even the last 4 of your credit. There were exploits, infinite inventory, invisibility, infinite cache and XP, infinite nukes, and invisibility. Oh, and your game speed was tied to frame rate. And then there's the customer service, like offering to reinstate cheaters' accounts who write an essay on why cheating is detrimental to online communities. And then there was this absolute gem. Customers who have downloaded the game are not eligible for refunds. The beauty of releasing the game on your own store and not on Steam is you get to keep all the money. Oh, and let's not forget Canvasgate. Did you pre-order the $300 Power Armor edition? Did you get a wrinkled nylon bag instead of a canvas one? Well, we're sorry. We aren't planning on doing anything about it. There was the cardboard disc with the code on it. Hey, where are you going? I'm not done yet. I have to tell you about the $80 bottle of rum with a plastic shelf. Come back. When I decided I wanted to make this video, I wasn't exactly sure where to start with Starfield. Because we could look at this game in a vacuum, but it's difficult to even define what it is without invoking the name Bethesda. But if we do, and Todd Howard tells us it's Skyrim in space, we know exactly what we're getting for better or for worse. My history with Bethesda games is the reason for my current hype levels. It's also the reason for my diminished expectations. It's also the reason we're 15 minutes into this rant and I haven't really gotten to the point yet. When I finally sat down to edit Starfield footage, I color-coded clips green for stuff I was excited about and red for stuff I was concerned about. And when I finished that process, I realized there's a lot more green. And all that green gave me hope. But that red is really, really red. So let's talk about the good, the bad, and the unknown. Right off the bat, the premise of this game has me pumped. Skyrim in space? Yes, please. Fallout in space? Take my money. A Bethesda RPG in space sounds amazing already. It sounds like a winning formula to me. It's Bethesda's game to lose at this point. Now, something often underrated that I'd like to highlight really quickly is the UI. It's so clean. I love it. Simple, sleek, futuristic. We spent a lot of time looking at HUD and menus. It's nice to see an easy-to-read approach to absorbing all this new information we'll be consuming. Another abstract worth your consideration, I already know the soundtrack's going to be amazing because Enon Zur. If you don't know him by name, you probably know his work. Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Warhammer, Dragon Age. Soundtracks may fly under a lot of radars, but to me, it's an important part of the world building. And in that regard, we're in good hands. A couple of points on characters as well. NPCs are a big step up from previous Bethesda titles. Staring at talking heads is how we digest most of the story, so it's nice to see progress they've made on that front. Customization looks pretty deep too. I don't invest much time here myself, but for those that do, it looks like you'll have plenty of options. And of course, your character isn't unique just for their appearance. Progression looks deep as well. You gain levels as you play, you can unlock perks or skills with pros and cons, and those skills can be ranked up using your abilities. I like that natural approach to ranking up skills. The more you do something, the better you get at it. I also love that there's an up and a downside to certain perks, something Obsidian introduced to Bethesda-era Fallout in New Vegas. Making tough progression choices makes certain paths all the more fun. I won't lie, I enjoyed high-level Fallout 4, but you're unstoppable. With no level cap, you can be the best at everything. I hope they find a good balance here. Now, as your character changes, so can your weapons. Weapon modding in Fallout 4 was an enjoyable diversion and helped give longer lifespans to less capable gear. I'm excited to spend some time in this interface and see how far we can tweak things. I'm hoping it's an extension and a progression from what we saw in Fallout 4. And another Fallout 4 feature I loved. Settlement building has basically become base building. I also love building in No Man's Sky. I can't imagine not enjoying the same in Starfield. The additional layer of hiring and managing workers could bring a really fun mechanic to it. Maybe it's just as simple as assigning workers was in a settlement, which wouldn't be bad, but maybe there's more, and I'm excited to see. And it's not just bases we can build. Hearing that you could mod your ship too was an interesting prospect, but I don't think anyone was expecting the depth of customization possible. It looks like you can craft really unique looking ships. Todd Howard stated they would handle differently too because you can fly them, but more on that in a minute. Given these highlights, Starfield is a game I'm really excited for. But what about that red? If you've ever played a Bethesda game before, performance being a concern shouldn't be a big surprise, and that's why I put it to the top of the list. Bethesda games are not what you would call smooth in general, and it's something you get used to, I guess? Digital Foundry did a breakdown of the Starfield gameplay trailer, and it's not great. The trailer is only 30 frames per second, which isn't a good start, but even that target is something the game regularly dips below. Keep in mind, this is the footage they're choosing to show us, so if it's the best representation, I have serious concerns about the overall performance of Starfield when it ships. Bethesda's stories are so good that I can look past a lot of performance issues, but dipping below 30 frames per second in 2023 is just disappointing at this stage. It doesn't affect the story experience as much, but it certainly affects things like gunplay. And gunplay, by the way, ouch. Nothing about this looks exciting. It looks super inconsistent. If I play this clip back a few times, tell me if it looks like anything is actually hitting these enemies, or if it looks more like you're holding the trigger until the health bar drains, causing a death animation. A side effect of the long-running problems with gunplay in Bethesda games is that whenever I can, I spec into speech-related perks so that I can bypass fights. I play Bethesda games for the story, not the gunplay, and so far, Starfield is another great example of why. Seriously, this gunplay looks atrocious. I also don't play Bethesda games for the graphics. They probably aren't showing off any RTX features because they can't even get the game running a consistent 30 frames without it, but the game looks decent enough. I won't fault them there. I'm ready to explore it. But this smoke and dust effect right here actually made me laugh. That looks like PS2 era effects to me. That does not look like a AAA game in 2023. I would hope we'd see better from Bethesda at this point, but they've made advancements in other areas like monetization. Now, if you only play single-player Bethesda RPGs like Skyrim and Fallout, you may not know why I'm concerned about monetization in Starfield. But Bethesda has not been shy about monetizing games in recent years. Earlier, I mentioned the Horse Armor DLC, of course, that's a legendary meme on its own. But Fallout 76, a game that launched at $60, had a heavy focus on the in-game store known as the Atomic Shop. Bethesda also published Wolfenstein Youngblood, a $60 co-op game with microtransactions, and let's not forget, Bethesda is now owned by Microsoft. And they weren't shy about dumping a very poorly thought out cosmetic shop on top of a live service game that coincidentally forgot to include the live service. And that's what they do with their flagship Xbox product! So just imagine what they'll do with other games. There's a lot that can go wrong here. Fingers crossed it doesn't. While some things are clearly good or bad, there are a couple of unknowns worth considering as well. There are 100 plus star systems in Starfield. There are over 1,000 planets. But what will actually be on those planets? Some of the locations we've seen look amazing, but we've also seen plenty of empty space too. Great spots to build your outpost, but will it actually be fun to explore? It does leave lots of room for modders to expand in the future, but only time will tell here. Keep in mind, quantity does not equal quality. Still hyped about it though. When I see resource gathering, base building, flying in space, I think No Man's Sky. Although there are some parallels on paper, I think we have to expect the Starfield experience will be dramatically different. Something causing some debate right now in online forums is suborbital or atmospheric flight. It's pretty cool in No Man's Sky to get into your ship on the surface, fly around the planet, or straight out into space. Although spaceflight in Starfield is definitely possible, I'm pretty sure we're not getting there the same way. Bethesda games have loading screens, something they have not been able to get away from to date. With NVMEs, the load time is greatly reduced, but from a couple of shots in the trailers, it sure looks like there are plenty of doors, aka loading screens. And I suspect the same will be the case with flight. I would speculate not just getting to orbit, but getting around a planet will likely be done similar to fast travel in past Bethesda titles. I would love for it not to work that way, but I'm pretty sure if No Man's Sky type travel was possible, they would have shown that already. I would love for this to be No Man's Sky with a Bethesda story bolted on top. But we're getting a Bethesda game with No Man's Sky bolted on top. Hopefully they choose the right parts. Microsoft needs this game to be successful. 2022 was a bad year for Xbox exclusives. Starfield and Redfall, both Bethesda titles, slipped to 2023. There were a couple of indies and smaller games, Grounded officially released, but Xbox was really lacking on homegrown offerings last year. And if they want to keep pushing people to Game Pass, they need to back it up with something. Starfield is a big bet for Microsoft at this point, one that they really need to pay off. The irony of Starfield being such an important exclusive is that it's also giving the FTC ammunition in its case against the Activision Blizzard acquisition. A primary concern there is games like Call of Duty going Xbox exclusive. I guess Microsoft thought they could get away with it when it came to Starfield because it's new IP, but it's a bad look and the timing of Starfield's release is unfortunately bad for that acquisition. And one last point to consider is the delay. Delays are never good, but they've become pretty commonplace. What it does mean, though, is that they weren't making the product they wanted on the timetable they expected. And when you think about it in those terms, it certainly gives me concern. Hitting the brakes can be a good thing. It's good to know when your product isn't ready. But may I remind you that Microsoft released Halo Infinite after a year delay, and another year after that, it's pretty close to finished. Of course, most of this is speculation. What the hell do I know? Although Bethesda gives us plenty of reasons to be excited, unfortunately it gives us an equally long list of reasons to seriously doubt any of this working at launch. I'm not scheduling a release day stream, that's for sure, but I will be playing release day via Game Pass, and from day one, I'll be there hoping, with fingers crossed, that this lives up to just some of the hype. Because I can say from past experience, if there's a good Bethesda RPG in there, even with lots of bugs, they're possible to look past. Like a racing game, things in the peripheral blur when you're focused on the horizon. And when Bethesda does it right, they make remarkable worlds worth exploring every inch of. I cannot wait to see what they do with 1000 Worlds. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a while since I've done a video essay. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like. If you didn't, then I will probably see you in the comments down below. If you're new, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. But until then, this is Move the Mouse signing off.